Hi, Geoff Lawton here, and I'm in Minnesota. And I was on this site in 2006, and we ran a practical workshop where we installed swales and a dam and started a food forest planning. And we ran a course while we were doing it. Now, 8 years later, it's quite something. And Dan Halsey has completely changed his career from being a commercial photographer to a full-time permaculture designer, consultant and teacher. He teaches from this site because he's learned so many tricks and so many interesting design elements that he's applied to make this system successful. And we work hand in glove together, extending permaculture across North America. Eight years ago, I was here in Minnesota at Prior Lake, and there was nothing here but a lawn. And this guy, Dan Halsey, got me to do a design exercise with a set of students over a weekend. Here he is here. I'm gonna take you to meet Dan Halsey. Hi, Dan.
Hey, Geoff.
8 years, mate.
Yeah, nice to see you again.
Things have changed.
Yeah, look at it, they've grown up.
It almost looks like the tropics. Wow, cold climate and all this has come up.
Yeah, it's a great food forest that we started in 2006. Everything's filled in quite well, and even though it's filled in, there's still spaces that I like to play with and add more plants.
It looks pretty full. You better show us a few things around here. I bet you've learned a few tricks on this one.
Sure. Well, I have to show you right off the bat comfrey. A friend of mine, Bruce Blair, gave me 6 plants about, maybe 6 or 7 years ago when we first got started. And it's very prolific, but this is a dynamic accumulator. And it's our green manure of choice. It's fantastic. It mines, it's got a big taproot, it brings up all these minerals and nutrients, and we chop and drop it underneath all of our fruit trees.
I know you're organic, you've got all this stuff. What's this thing on your back? What are we doing here? You doing some spraying?
I'm doing some spraying, but it's good spraying. So what you'll see on some of these leaves still is, and we had a heavy rain, so most of it's gone and I have to respray, is kaolin clay. It's actually a dietary supplement for humans, but it's a very big deterrent for insects. They don't like it. They get it in their soft chewing parts of their mouths. It deters them from eating the leaves and miners, any kind of flies and things on the fruit. So we cover the trees with kaolin clay. It kind of looks like Christmas here when we get it done. And it really just stops them dead in their tracks. It's totally organic. It's a very highly fined mineral.
Wow. So we came here 8 years ago, there was nothing but lawn, and now you've got a whole education system, design system, food forest, gardens.
Right.
Yeah.
It was actually, I think the ecology leveraged me because we put in the system, we put an invitation out to nature, and nature said, you want to play? Let's have some fun. And basically it changed me as much as I changed the landscape.
That can happen to anybody. And we've got a quiet section, but this is a really busy road. You've got some exposure here.
Right, we have a major freeway out in front of our house here. And as we've built our system, we're always building buffering berms. We have an earthen wall at the far end here. It's quite noisy here, but once you get down by the house, you can barely hear anything. But it also means that we have resources from this freeway. Anything I put down by the freeway, as you might imagine, disappears. You know, if I have recyclables, if I have an old Pontiac rear end that I find in the woods, I put it at the end of the freeway. But I also, if I need wood chips, if I need cut grass, I need clean fill, I put a sign at the end of my driveway, and by this time the community knows I'm the guy who's looking for stuff, you know, and I get all my wood chips dumped here, all that kind of material. It's really great. So as much as it's kind of an annoyance, it also is my connection with the community.
The problem is the solution. It can be.
Because we have deep snow, the voles, the mice will girdle the young trees. And so we have to put tree wrap around all the trees. These are called tree tubes. This one is a spiral kind that easily wraps around the tree. You still get ventilation. It doesn't hurt the tree as it grows. But in the wintertime, as the snow comes up, the mice can't get at the tree.
And this one over here?
Yeah, this is a major one. There's lots of different kinds. This is basically just drain tile. And you can see it goes way into the ground. And so we slice drain tile and we put that around the tree, and that's kind of our first defense. But when we get 3 feet of snow, the mice and the voles, they just go on top of the snow and they just eat it up. So we've added an extension on this because in these heavy snows, they'll actually strip the bark up all the way up the tree, or where they can get at it. So the higher you can go, the better.
And you're carpeting all the way through here, that's to catch fruit?
Right, this Toka plum here, the fruit on that is only the best when it falls off the tree. We don't harvest it from the tree, so we put tarps out here and we put blankets, whatever we can find, because when those things fall off the tree, they're like the juiciest, sweetest little fruit you've ever had.
Here's a traditional unglazed clay pot, and it's a low fire temperature unglazed pot, so the water weeps through, and it's the most efficient watering system known to man. The water in here is actually cool, so the evaporation on the outside allows you to actually cool a water bottle inside. So while you're in the garden, you can have a nice refreshing cool drink. Here's that little unglazed pot demonstration. Water's got to be kept full, and plants can be planted within 2 foot around this pot, and the roots will move towards that very slow moving water. Now if this ground here is already wet, the water will not leak because osmosis will hold it back. This is an extremely efficient system. Now that's evaporative cooling, keeps it a little bit cool, but if you want thermal mass to keep it a bit warmer, especially as your temperatures cool down in these really cold climates, you can put a tin, and it'd be better if you painted this black so it held heat, over a reservoir. Now this water jug here holds the water because there's an airlock here. So that water with a black tin over the top will make it nice and warm. Water's a great thermal mass, so you'll have warm water going down into the ground. And when you take it off, you've got a full unglazed pot there and a full jug of water here, just like a water drink dispenser. And just put it on there. What a great way to keep the temperature in the ground just that little bit warmer. So Dan, we've got an earthman behind us as a sound barrier, but what have we got here? What's this?
This is what we call a pugel culture. You've heard of a hugelkultur. When we cleaned out our pond of all the pond muck, 6 years of koi poo and everything, it was really great rich material. We built a berm out of it, and that's where now we're growing this year's tomatoes.
So it's fish poo. It's
basically fish poo. Oh, and super, super heavy clay, which is actually great. And a lot of people don't like planting tomatoes in clay, but we water it once a week. And that clay is like a battery. We water it once a week really heavily, and that's all we got to do. And we have really great production.
So it's a pond pugel culture mound. There you go. That's a new one. Ah, so a geodesic dome, eh?
It's a great shape, but I have to actually tell you that it may look like a geodesic dome, but it's actually a trellis. Every structure we have in the garden is a trellis. This thing that goes around that keeps the animals out, you might call it something else, but it's actually a trellis. And that works very well with municipalities, with cities, because they don't like that F word, fences. So everything that we build is a trellis. And if everything on the design is called a trellis, they're very happy.
Well, everything needs more than one function, and if it keeps people happy, that's great.
Yeah, so beans, squash, pumpkins cover this thing. It's actually very sturdy.
So 4 little garden swales on contour, just picking up the runoff from the driveway, eh?
Exactly. We were losing all that water to a culvert that's at the bottom, and instead we're able to make this now a productive area. And even when it hasn't rained for weeks, the water is stored in the ground, and we've all got all sorts of comfrey, and we're basically building the soil up from this heavy clay. And as we go along, we'll start adding more fruit trees, more production.
Quite a diversity of fruit trees, and they're looking good.
Right, we have nannyberry and high bush cranberry, mostly for wildlife, but we also have serviceberry for us. And sooner or later, we'll start to bring in more of the fruit trees, the apple trees, maybe a few cherry trees. And right up on the next swale up here, we actually have 2 Korean nut pines. So in long-term overstory, I'm hoping those nut pines will come through.
Nice looking scythe and very sharp. So tell us, why do you use a scythe instead of a motorized machine?
You would be amazed. The time it takes me to use, say, a mower to mow either the orchard areas or grass paths, I can do it faster with a scythe. I don't have to maintain it. It's not as loud. This is actually more of a zen motion when I'm doing it. There's no maintenance to this except as you're using it, and you get to use it to sharpen that. So it's quiet. I know it's going to work, and I just get better at it, you know, as I use it. And I can actually get closer to the trees. I can get closer to the fragile plants with this, and with one little pull all the weeds out, the thistle or whatever might be there.
And low embodied energy, eh?
Oh, exactly, right? And it's not an energy, it's not a muscle thing, right? It's just technique and it's finesse. And all it has to do is run that weed across this blade just a little bit, and it slices right through.
Dan, you did some great permaculture design work, and you've put out a new book recently. Can you give us an idea how you approach design? Because you do teach people design and get them familiar with actually design. How do you go about the process?
Absolutely. Some years ago I spent quite a bit of time trying to develop a process, a stepped process or a progression of how I can design this and have all the information I need at each point to not waste time and to answer all the questions as I need to. And really what I start with in my process, and as I teach people too, is start with the most basic thing, and that's what I start with, is just basically scratch paper. I'll take a piece of grid paper, go out in the back or wherever, and this is basically a small backyard, measure things. It doesn't have to be accurate, it's full of mistakes, but as long as I have my measurements, you know, I go outside and I mark where things are. Then I come inside and I grab a nice piece of vellum graph paper and I measure everything out with a ruler and with really good pencils and get all of my measurements correct. That's my base map.
So this is a sort of rough grid graph paper.
Exactly.
Oh well, grid paper, right? You call
Yeah.
that? And then this is more accurate graph paper. So you go from here to here.
Right.
Where do you go from there?
Well, once I have my base map, then I start playing with bum wad or tracing paper, and I can use the base map underneath and start playing with positions of plants. I really don't know what species of plants. I just know I want fruit trees in here somewhere. There's going to be some shrubs in here and some perennials. So I build the structure of this planting area before I know what even the plants are. So I fill the space with trees and shrubs and perennials, and basically just using a little stencil, a little green stencil.
So you're saying that you just say, you're not thinking about the species of trees. You just say, I want a large tree there, evergreen or deciduous. I want a small bush there. I want a little plant there, and you just move it in sizes of circles.
Exactly. Right.
Why? Because it confuses you. You think it confuses you if you start thinking about plants too
If
early?
you start putting in the species, there's so much bias in where you want it and how you want it that you really get off the ecological functions of the plant. What we're trying to build is structure, right? We're listening to nature. We're letting nature tell us how things should be. Which way is north? Where is the water? That's going to tell us where the trees are, right? And we put the biggest tree I can possibly fit in this space or a number of trees, and once my trees are set, then I look for the shrubs that I can put in and then the perennials that surround that. So it's the structure using a stencil or even freehanding to kind of see what is the best shape. And I'll do 4 or 5 of these, you know, really to kind of play with it. Well, what if the tree was over here? Or what if I'm using the shrubs in this sort of way, or if it's that sort of pattern? Then that's what the tracing paper is for. Once you get a really nice structure that you think you like, I even have my swales drawn in here, I have my access drawn in here, so I know how I'm going to get in and out of the garden and how my water is going to move in the garden. Once I'm happy with that, then I take the bum wad onto I put it actually underneath another drawing, so I trace that, and I trace my final design onto a new piece of vellum or a new piece of paper, and that's my design. I've got all my trees in, I've got my shrubs there, and you can tell it's a lot cleaner than the other design, but that's the point of, in your final design, it needs to be easily read so everybody understands where things go.
So do you then start to look at trees?
Exactly.
And do you give options? You could give options for each one of these numbers then.
Oh, you know, and really, if this backyard appeared in Tucson or in Portland or here in Minneapolis, the same shape would just be a different species of tree or shrub, because it's still facing, it's still getting the same sunlight or maybe the same water, but it's going to change based on the climate. At that point, I go to the plant database, or I go to my favorite database, and I find the plants that fit this space, and I start listing them all and picking what I want. In this case, I decided I wanted an apple tree in the middle and 3 Bali cherry trees, because I really like Bali cherries. So those were my main trees. They sized right in for dwarfs. And then I started surrounding them with nitrogen fixers and nutrient accumulators. So I had my main anchor plants, I call them, or diva plants, and I surrounded them with nitrogen fixers, dynamic accumulators, and then we just went out from there. And even with a design like this, there's a little sidewalk here. We put our smaller plants right by the sidewalk, so that's all strawberries. But as you're building the structure of your design, your access to all these plants is also very important. So trees are in back, and these smaller shrubs are in front, so I can see what's going on and I can also get access.
So anywhere within, say, a temperate climate, that's going to fit. If you go to tropics or desert, you're going to have different sun requirements. But
right.
Within a climate, now you have, what's this database? You've got an actual database for the cold climates?
But we have an online plant database, and it's a relational database. It's called the Natural Capital Plant Database. And you put into it your site conditions, your growing zone, the type of soil you have, and then you search for, you want fruit trees or you're looking for some kind of ecological service, and it outputs a database spreadsheet that opens up in Excel. And right there you have all the plants listed by scientific name, their height and their width, and that's the list you use to go find the plants that fit the structure of your space. So that's the Natural Capital Plant Database. That's online. It's very much tailored towards designers.
So we've got our initial rough. We go through all these bits of paper. Mm-hmm. We use our circle template. We've got our database.
Right.
Let's get this out of the way. Where do we go from here?
All right. Well, in some cases, and this is on vellum. This was done in Costa Rica. And in that case, this is the base map we did down there. This is done with a compass and a 300-foot tape, trying to find our base map so that we can just basically find what are the functional spaces, things like that. Once we have our base map drawn, we bring it, or we take a picture of it, or we have it scanned at an office supply store, and we bring it into Adobe Illustrator. And once it's in Adobe Illustrator, now we're free to do a lot of great work. Adobe Illustrator and a lot of the vector design software packages, you can build your plant symbols, you can size them up correctly, you build your plant symbol list, and you have your structure already, and then it's time to really start playing with how things are going to fit, and you have a chance to look at it. And since it's on the computer, it's easy to manipulate, it's easy to move things around, and especially when you're working with clients, and you bring this big design, they're going to change their mind or something's going to change, you can't get a certain plant, it's easy to change. There is kind of a steep learning curve with using these software packages. You really have to get fast, especially if you're doing this professionally. Time is money. So to do it well, and in our case, we like to be very clean. There's a lot of white space, there's the symbols, it's very easily read. But once you do this in Adobe Illustrator or something else, it's easy to change.
And then all these, you've still got numbers here, but they relate to a key. That's how it works?
Right, so all the plant symbols are related to a plant key, and so if you're looking for number 8, whatever that might be, it'd be bur oak. If you're looking for number 7, that's black locust. So, and that kind of, after a while, you kind of get to know the numbers on this. But one thing I should really mention is when you're working in these software packages, everything is in layers. You'll see the contour lines in here. That's a layer that we can turn off and turn on when we need it. The soil map, which you don't see here, that helps us find out what the soils are, that's another layer we have. So a project like this might have 17, 25 different layers of information for us to use to decide what plants we're going to put in, what will work there, and also what the shape of the property is.
Well, there you go. It just goes to show what happens when you apply permaculture to your own landscape and you learn from it so you can teach other people. Dan Halsey is now a permaculture full-time practitioner. He's changed his careers. He's even written a book and teaches design himself to other people. This is something any of us can engage in, a complete change of career so that you can take up this meaningful occupation and help other people to do the same thing.